My stick figures have been very popular so far today. Can't have an AP Lit presentation without the Jesus fish. Maybe. Okay, there we go. All right. So we have, quote unquote, Bryn, were you the one who said Jesus fish? Okay, so we have Bryn's Jesus fish, and Matthew said yes, that's definitely a Jesus fish, I think. Okay. Anybody know the wheel?
It's a ship wheel.
It is not a ship wheel. All three of these, 1, 2, 3, all three would be religious symbols. So the first one is Christianity, the fish. The second one is the wheel, which people associate with Buddhism. And then the third one is Hinduism. It's a symbol, basically word. Anyone have any idea what the word would be?
Peace.
Peace.
Close. Close. Yeah. It's the symbol for Om. And you would think of that as like the meditative state when you're at peace, contentment, all that kind of stuff. The reason we have all three with the questioning Mr. Stick Figure is we have Siddhartha. Siddhartha, the book, is going to take place in India, 5th century BCE. So we're going back about 2,500 years ago. And we'll kind of get into what's happening and all that stuff. Around that time is when you do have, certainly Hinduism is an established religion. It's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, still current religions in the world. Buddhism is starting to take shape in the 5th century BCE because you have the Buddha, who is kind of shooting off from Hinduism and creating his own way of life. Your author, Hermann Hesse, is German, who is writing about this, and he also is kind of going through some religious turmoil. Now, that's not to say that the book, therefore, we're going to be talking about religion the whole time, because we're not. But the book has aspects of Christianity, he's Lutheran, certainly Hinduism and Buddhism in it. And so it's not a book that is going to be endorsing one way of life or one religion over the other, but there's certainly going to be aspects of all three of them working their way into the book. And I'd say in a way for the reader to kind of figure out what works best for him or her. So it's not at the end you're going to do a DRQ where you have to decide which way of life is the best. We're not going to be doing that to you. We're not going to make anyone convert to one thing or the other, but certainly all three of these things are going to be involved. I said the notes, whether we had a 2-hour delay or not, or hour and a half, whatever we have, would be today and tomorrow, because we'll do certainly some background on the book, but also give you a little bit of quick background on Hinduism and Buddhism, just so you have enough of an idea of kind of what's happening in the book itself to be able to follow along. But you're not, again, having religious terminology, vocab quiz, or anything like that that you need to be worried about. All right, so praying stick figures have been the popular one. I thought that was pretty good. Which one? Down there? Yeah. Is he going up or down?
Down.
That's what we need to figure out. All right, so with the book itself, it is heavily based with Hinduism culture, and I would start jotting some of this stuff down as we're going through it. And we'll try to bring some clarity as much as we can. One thing that's going to be kind of confusing about the book is I steal yours. Your main character is a guy by the name of? Good job. Siddhartha meets a guy called the Enlightened One, who is Buddha. Buddha's name, historically, is Siddhartha. Oh. I know. Bryn was the one I was most worried about. This is why we're going through this. Your main character, your protagonist, is not the Buddha. It's not meant to be like split personality or anything like that. It just so happens that you have a guy named Siddhartha meeting another guy named Siddhartha. Dare that Matt meet another person named Matt. Now, the good thing for you, and this would be more confusing from a historical perspective just because of some background I give you, throughout the book, whenever the Buddha shows up, he's referred to basically as the Enlightened One, or Buddha Gautama. So it's not going to go Siddhartha said to Siddhartha or anything like that. But if, I don't know what gets covered in a world history class or something like that, you know, if you go, isn't the Buddha's name Siddhartha? Yes. And I think Hess is doing that on purpose. He certainly wants to draw some parallels, but they are distinct people. It is a work of fiction. It's not a historical book. It's not meant to be a biography or anything like that. If you take a look at book reviews, when the book first came out, people were talking about it being a biography of the Buddha, and they were just plain wrong. They were like Annie, they didn't finish the book. But unlike Annie, she will finish the book. That final page, just pulling her in. Brenda, you got that? You handle? Okay. No, that's not going to happen.
It's like Will Grayson movies. That's a good book. It's so hard to follow.
It is.
We do have the book where we have 15 different narrators.
I don't read that which book.
It's As I Lay Dying.
Are they
It's
all
like my
dying?
What's the
biography.
next one?
Thank you for laughing. All right. One of the main things that we'll kind of mention here, and they do come up in the book a little bit, is Hindu religion is based on texts called the Vedas. The Vedas would a parallel for Christianity would kind of be like Psalms. So think like hymns, poems, things like that. The origin of the Vedas are unknown, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But basically, they are teaching that the beauty of nature must be ignored because it is an illusion. So Hinduism and Buddhism both are dealing with reincarnation, and the way to basically escape reincarnation is to find peace, and that whole kind of Om thing. So in a way, you could go beautiful. You know, nature is beautiful and all these wonderful things, but it's simply an illusion because if you are living, and you can relate to this as a junior in high school, you are suffering.
Yes.
To live is to suffer. So that does not mean, therefore, you want to die as soon as possible. That's not the message whatsoever. But it is the idea that humanity deals with desire, and if you desire, therefore you suffer. So kid opens up, shiny Christmas present, this is wonderful, but now I want something more. That would be desire, which is going to lead to suffering. So if you find peace and contentment, that Om, you are able to kind of escape that whole desire aspect. Hinduism still does have gods. And Hinduism is like any religion. There's going to be a lot of variations of it no matter what. India is a big place. Predominantly you have a lot of Hindus. Billions of people. And so the way that one person might practice Hinduism in northern India could be very different from how someone would practice it in southern India. And you can think of the same thing with Christianity so far as denominations and stuff like that. There are multiple gods. Most Hindus will pray or worship similar gods, but there can be variations. I don't think there's like a finite number of Hindu gods, but like if you were to take all the variations, it can go up into the millions very easily. We're not going to make you write them all down. I think that. Megan, do you have a question? No, it's Om. You'll get it.
I think it was.
You'll get it. But the Vedas, when they originate, they are oral, and then they get passed down orally, and it's not till later on that they are written down, at which point we get into some other stuff. Okay? All right, so we're going to work our way from the sliding guy to the flying guy, or the falling guy, whichever. Give you a little background on the Vedas. Then we got Brahmanism, which is like the caste system in India. The Upanishads, which is my favorite word to pronounce. Upanishads. Great. And then we'll kind of get into Buddhism here a little bit. Already mentioned the Vedas to you, collection of hymns, prayers, things like that. It's believed that they originate sometime around 1500 BCE. BCE stands for before Common Era. We now live in CE, Common Era. It's like BC and AD. No one knows exactly where they come from or came from. You have two main groups of thought. One is that they originated in India with the indigenous people to India. Others that they came with the Aryans. Aryans would be like Indo-Aryans. This has nothing to do with Nazism and Hitler and Aryans and then all that kind of stuff. From a civilization standpoint, the Indo-Aryans like one of the main groups of people that migrate and then go to Europe and then go to parts of Asia and Southeast Asia and all that kind of stuff. Indo-Aryans, no one again knows for sure. Most would say originate like in northern Afghanistan. So if a lot of Indians would like to think that it is indigenous to India, whereas you'll have some outsiders going, we think it might have come from other people based on texts and genealogies and all that kind of stuff. No one knows for sure. But 1500 BCE is a long time ago, so you're talking about religion that's been in practice for over 3,000 years. All right. Then you get into social classes or like caste systems, and certainly in some places this would still be strictly followed. In other places, as India is kind of getting more like a main middle class, there might be some laxity with these rules. But for the most part, you would break down into one of 5 stations, so to speak. It is hereditary and it is strict. So if you are born a servant, you are a servant. You will always be a servant. So all those with the romance ideas of the servant girl will marry the nobleman or something like that, that wouldn't be happening. I don't know why I'm looking at Kelly when I say that.
No, definitely.
What would Darby be? Untouchable?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Thank you so
No
much.
problem. Siddhartha, the character, is a Brahmin. So he is high up there. That doesn't necessarily mean the wealthiest, but it's certainly like the most sacred. This would be the priests and whatnot. So his father is a Brahmin priest, a Hindu Brahmin priest. He is born into that, and so it would be expected that that's what he would be. But you have nobles, merchants, servants, and then the untouchables, which are the lowly of the low. And that's the system that you would basically remain. When you kind of go, oh, that's so terrible, keep in mind that throughout history, like marriages and things like that would predominantly be arranged anyway. So, it's going to be a noble parent talking to another noble parent. Hey, I have a son, you have a daughter, let's make this thing work. You're not going to have nobles marrying servants or untouchables marrying merchants or Brahmins or anything like that. Love is not real. And time is an illusion. That's another thing that we're going to learn. And to live is to suffer. Reading check quiz. Yeah, no. And now you know what kind of hot dog the Buddha orders. Brooke, you gotta know that part too.
They don't order hot dogs. They only question they don't
What
eat
did the
hot
Buddha
dogs.
say to the hot dog vendor?
He said no.
Make me one with everything.
That's funny.
What?
Make me one with everything. You'll figure it out next week.
But then you said I'm so
thank you.
I said, please continue.
For Hindu, the cow is sacred. The cow is sacred, so you're not going to do beef. Hot dog probably no because of where it's coming from in the pig, but. All right, my favorite word, the Upanishads. The Upanishads are different from the Vedas in the sense that the Vedas I mentioned to you are they're oral texts. They are passed down. They do eventually become written down around the 8th century, the 9th century BCE. But for the most part, they're passed down orally. They are, and I don't remember what year the oldest one is, they are the oldest religious text, I think, known to humanity, civilization, older than Dead Sea Scrolls and all that kind of stuff, written in Sanskrit. But the belief is there would not be much variation from the written version to the spoken one because of mnemonic devices that were used to carefully memorize them and whatnot. The Upanishads, with the Christianity parallel, are kind of like the New Testament. They explain the Vedas. They give you understanding of the Vedas, kind of like how the New Testament can explain some things within the Old Testament. They are written down. They start about the 7th century BCE. There are multiple, not versions, but like multiple installments of the Vedas that kind of come out every couple hundred of years or so. So it's not that all the Vedas are done in the 7th century BCE, but that's when most of them kind of start to come out to explain things. But this is where you start to get terminology like karma, dealing with reincarnations and all that kind of stuff. And also the understanding of Maya, which you can now go, my sister means time and space. And that could just blow her mind.
with Legos?
I think there are comic versions of about everything, so there very well could be. You think there are, or you're asking if there are?
No, I'm asking because if they like come out every few thousand years, how do they keep this? Like, how do they preserve them? That'd be my question.
In
If
that
you ever-
careful comic book plastic wrapper.
Which crazy people would see
The oldest ones that they have, I don't know what segments they are. Like, I don't think they have like the complete, the original one or things like that. But it's pieces and pieces and things like that. Both majority of Hindus and Buddhists believe in reincarnation, and so that's a concept that is going to come up throughout the course of the book. It's not that Megan goes from a human to a toad and then back to another person or anything like that. There can certainly be breaks in between where purgatory would happen, and Megan wouldn't go, "Hey, I used to be a human, now I'm a squirrel," because it's not as if the same personality is there, but the same. I wouldn't call it soul, but it would be more of like an essence of you would still be there. But the reincarnation, you keep going through the cycles until you would be able to find that peace, contentment, or home that you'd be looking for. Megan?
What makes someone able to write part of the Vedas if they keep coming out?
No, like, it'd be similar to the way like Gospels kind of work in the sense where you have like the Gospel of Mark, the Gospel of Matthew. Is that you?
Yeah.
Okay. Good job. Where they're like the Gospels are attested to people, but it's not saying that Mark wrote this, that Paul physically wrote this particular letter. They kind of get passed down. The Upanishads would be like Hindu priests, scholars. It's like teachings.
Okay.
So to better understand the Vedas, here is like an explanation of it. You have a similar thing happens in Judaism with Talmud and things like that, where you're getting explanation how to go about this, how to live properly and whatnot. So in some ways, it's almost like a manual. But it's not saying like a god or one of the gods wrote this, text. It's understood that it's more of this is a better way to live your life if you're going to follow the essence of Hinduism, so to speak.
So the Upanishads are the ones that keep coming out, not the Vedas.
Right, the Vedas are the original thing. And the it's not as if they're still coming out. There's 4 main installments of the Upanishads, so they kind of keep building off of one another. They're very philosophical in nature. The book, SiddharthaA, is very philosophical kind of in nature. It's not going to be telling you this is how you should live your life and quiz you on things from all the Upanishads. And then Buddhism. Don't write all this stuff down. This would be kind of more an explanation for going forward. But this would be historically, again, not your character in the book, but historically, you got a wealthy young man named Siddhartha Gautama. I think in your translation, because the book originally comes out in German, I think they changed the spelling of Gautama to Gotama. But he's looking for a way to kind of end that human suffering, that desire. And so this is where he kind of breaks off in the 5th century BCE in India. This is the same time frame as the book itself that we're reading, because Siddhartha is going to meet, the Buddha and all that kind of stuff. So it is through meditation that he is trying to attain nirvana or nothingness, where nothingness in the sense that you don't desire anything, you are at peace. So what is the main conflict of the book? You have a person trying to find peace. For Hermann Hesse, the author, he is a person who is trying to find peace. And so he is a German Lutheran who is very familiar with Hinduism and Buddhism, and he's kind of putting all of these things together within his one text that he's publishing here. The book itself really gets popular in like 1960s. This would be the kind of book that like Kesey and his buddies would be reading while taking their LSD after they just got done talking about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That would be crazy. Probably not. Would be my answer, but you never know.
Do you think that Siddhartha smelled like the spirit? So we'll talk about this after we.
He does have a variation of smells though throughout the book. So, hold on. So tomorrow when you come in, we're going to start talking about a couple different things here with the Buddha. one thing for you to understand, you are reading part 1 of your book. Part 1 has 4 chapters. Part 2 has 8 chapters, which is going to be mimicking this 8-fold path. So there's definitely some Buddhist structure to it that we'll talk about. If you have Buddhist, just leave it out. Your writing folder can stay with you or drop off in the